Geezers, Specimen here. We are doing the Pool 2 tier list for Marvel Snap. This is before the first balance patch, so if you want to see the updated tier list, make sure you're subscribed once these balance patches come through. We're going to do another one of these. Let's start off with Sunspot. I'm going to put Sunspot at the bottom of popping off. Personally, I put it very decent right at the top, but I think a lot of people are going to want it in popping off. It is a very solid card. There's lots of cool decks you can build around this card. I'm not personally a big fan, but it can obviously play for an insane amount of stats. So yeah, we'll put Sunspot in there. Also good with Storm, just to help you secure that lane. Up next, we've got Swarm. I think Swarm is probably one of the most underrated cards in the whole game. So if you discard Swarm, you get 2 0-power copies of Swarm in hand. What this means is you discard the first Swarm, you've got 2 copies. Then you can discard another, and you've suddenly got, what, 3? 4 copies? I don't know, maths is hard. Mate, this card is honestly really underrated. Because there's 0 power, you can just hold on to these cards until turn 6. And then on turn 6, you can just dump down so many of these cards, which is a lot of surprise value. Like, you can play a Hulk or your Apocalypse and all these Swarm cards at the same time, distributing points, filling the board with stats. Particularly as well, if you manage to buff the initial Swarm card with something like Okoye or Nakia, all of them are going to be buffed. That's right, all of them are going to be buffed. So 5 stats, 0 cost. That's kind of insane. Like, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Swarm is actually secretly popping off. I think I need to try and build a deck around this card myself. Vision up next. Vision I like a lot, particularly in Lockjaw decks. I've posted a lot of Lockjaw decks. It's probably my favorite deck in the game. One of the strongest, I think, outside of Nova, Moon Girl Nova. Vision is being able to move a turn. It's not every turn. Obviously, you're playing it on turn 5, so it's only really moving once. It is worse than Captain Marvel, which is a Pool 3 card, but it's still very solid, and I do think it has place in competitive decks, which is why I'm putting it in the popping off. Maybe we could put it in very decent. Let's put it at the top of very decent, but I do really like this card. But I think because Captain Marvel is better, quite significantly, we'll put it at the top of very decent. I think it's reasonable. Up next, we have Warpath. Warpath is a pretty tricky one, because I think on its own, I'd put it here. But due to the other lack of good proactive 4-cost cards in this game, I'm going to put it at decent. If you think about it at this stage in the game, the only decent 4-cost card you have, which is proactive, which you can just play on any board state, is Kazar. The other 2 good 4-drops are Enchantress and Shang-Chi, which is in this pool. But Enchantress and Shang-Chi are disruption cards, and often you play them on turn 5 or even turn 6. Warpath is boosting itself by 4 if a row you have is empty, and that's honestly pretty difficult to achieve, because that means you're only going to be playing 8 cards that game. And if there's a scenario, a location like the Raptor one, like Sanctumorium, of course Central Park in particular, a Space Throne, it can get pretty awkward to actually get your Warpath value. So I would put it in half decent, I think, on its own, but because it's one of the only good 4-drops, like Namor's in there as well, I'm going to put it in decent category, because I have played this card a little bit, but never really liked it that much. Ebony Maw. This is a really interesting one. I think you could make a case for it to go either in very decent, or honestly, it could be in popping off. We're going to put it in very decent for the moment, because it's not really tested. But Ebony Maw, I think it has 2 key uses. I think in movement decks, and just playing it in the far left lane on turn 3 is solid, because then you can just move cards with Heimdall into that left lane. So if you're not familiar, Ebony Maw, basically, you can only play it on turn 3, before turn 3. You can't play it after turn 3. And then you can't play cards in this lane. What you can do with this card, though, which I think is where it's probably popping off, is you can play this with Viper. Viper is a card which is going to move Ebony Maw to your opponent's side of the board, therefore stopping your opponent playing any cards into that lane. So it's working in a similar way to a Professor X, a much worse Professor X, like basically 9 stats worse, because you're giving your opponent 6 stats instead of having 3 stats on your side of the board. But you can play it 2 turns earlier, so really, really nice. I think it's better than Professor X when you can get it to work, but obviously it's a combo that's not going to work all the time, and it is quite clunky. But I think Ebony Maw could be in popping off, but we'll put it in very decent for the moment. Up next, Iceman. Iceman is definitely popping off. I think this is one of the most underrated cards in the whole game. Korg and Iceman, I think, are 2 of the best 1-drops going. Iceman is going to be putting one of the cards in your opponent's hand and basically increasing the cost of it. So let's say your opponent has got a Storm in their hand that they're ready to play on turn 3, and you play Iceman turn 2, and it makes your opponent's Storm cost 4. That is a really big deal. Like, you can completely disrupt your opponent's game plan with Iceman. I think a big reason it's underrated is because you don't often see what card Iceman hits. If you could actually see what your Iceman is hitting, I think people would like this card a lot more, but I think it's a fantastic card. We have Leech up next. Leech is removing the abilities from all cards in your opponent's hand. If you could play this on turn 1, it would be like the best card in the game, right? Like, it's an insanely powerful ability. Obviously, it's only 3 stats, and the fact you have to play it so late is the problem. But There's ways of playing it sooner. Wave is one example. You can play Wave and then Leech, so you could Leech on turn 4. Psylocke as well would allow you to play Leech on turn 4. As a result, I think we have to put Leech into the very decent category. I think it's a really, really powerful card. But honestly, like, maybe it's just here and we just do this. Let's do this. I think we'll put Leech in decent. We'll put Warpath in half decent. Okay. I think I prefer this. Agent 13 up next. Agent 13 at the moment is in the popping off category. Probably like here, right? Like better than Iceman even. But this is mainly because of how good the Collector is, how good Dinosaur is. You're adding a card to your hand, a random card. It's not really the value in the random card. It's more the fact that you're adding a card to your hand and you're getting 2 stats on the board. Like if you play this with Collector down, it's 4 tempo. It's already kind of insane. Bucky Barnes up next. I think we have to put Bucky Barnes into popping off category as well. Do you know what? I'm relegating both these cards. Yeah, I think honestly, like, I think these are all very decent cards. I don't know if they're popping off. I think Iceman, Agent 13 are. Bucky Barnes, really good with Carnage. Decent with Deathlock, but it's bad with Venom, and it's bad with, in particular, Killmonger, which are the pool 3 consume cards. So I'm going to put these, I'm going to put Bucky Barnes. I think I'm going to put Bucky Barnes, like, here. I think Swarm is super underrated. And I really like all these cards. I think all these cards are very decent, and these cards are actually popping off. So I think this is looking a little bit better. Yeah, Cloak up next. Mate, honestly, Cloak, I'm tempted to put in popping off category. Like, a big problem with Cloak is the fact that movement decks are really bad. But this is a 4-stat card for 2 energy with upside. So it's double the energy cost. That is really, really good for 4-cost card. 2-cost card to be playing for 4 stats. So you're looking at Lizard. Lizard is 4 stats with downside. This is 4 stats with upside. And yeah, Lizard sucks. I think we've got to put Cloak in popping off. I think it's probably just a card that you could include in a lot of decks as just a value card, right? It's 4 stats for 2. But when you consider the upside potential of this card, I think it's got to go in popping off. It's just not a card you see as much because the actual deck it's played in is not quite as weak. It's not quite as strong. Infonaut up next. Controversial. I'm going to put it into the broken category. The card on its own is not so good. Like, I think it's a pretty fair card. Just 20 stats, you have to miss a turn 5, cool. The problem with this card is when you can start summoning it with cards like Ghost Rider. So if you discard Infonaut and then play Ghost Rider is playing Infonaut. And Ghost Rider's 3 costs. Now, Ghost Rider's broken, but there's also Jubilee. You could Jubilee into Infonaut. That's insane. You could Lockjaw into Infonaut. Also insane. You can play Dracula with Infonaut. Dracula's going to basically consume your Infonaut on the final turn, and then your Dracula is playing for 20 stats of 4. I think Infonaut just needs to maybe lose like 5 stats or so, because of all the ways that you can actually replay this card. It's kind of insane. Maybe 5 is too much, but honestly, at 20 stats, this card is broken in my opinion. Like, for sure, not because of the card itself, but because of the amount of interesting synergies and overpowered synergies that this card enables, I think. Okay, Okoye. I think you could make a case for Okoye to go in this top category, along with Angela. Like, I think Angela and Okoye are pretty overtuned. I think at the moment, though, she's going to go in popping off just because there's more cards in the broken category that are just way better than Okoye, such as Collector, right? Like, Collector's top of the bill. I do think Okoye is overtuned, though, and I do think it deserves a nerf at some point, perhaps. Maybe, like, 0 stats on Okoye. She's buffing your whole deck by 2. This is particularly powerful with cards like Jubilee, which also I think you could probably put into the broken category, but we'll probably put into the popping off category. We'll come back to her. Like, I think you can make a case to put Okoye up here, to be honest. But yeah, we'll put her popping off. Shang-Chi, popping off category for me. Really, really good card. This is a weird variant of it. Well, it's a nice variant. This is obviously not the normal card. Really good at the moment. Dinosaurs, Infonauts, Collectors, all sorts. Monster Island is a location as well. Like, very, very good card. Nakia, I think we've also got to put into popping off. Maybe she could go into very decent, but yeah, I think we'll put Nakia into very decent. There's some decks that you can do with Nakia where you basically, I'm trying to think of the pool 6 card, Sarah I think she's called, where she reduces the cost of all cards in your hand. And if you've Nakia'd all your cards, you can basically on turn 6 just play a whole bunch of 0 cost cards which have all been buffed by Nakia. Like, I think she could go into popping off, but because there's also like other very decent cards and very decent, I think we'll put her into very decent. I think these other cards are a level above her, to be fair. So I think Nakia into very decent. Up next we have Rhino. Rhino probably deserves its own category. Absolutely terrible card. Never play it. It is one of the worst cards in the game. Basically, Rhino is ruining a location. So you could just play Scarlet Witch for 1 point less and 2 energy less. So don't play Rhino, it's terrible. Sabretooth, I think also has to go into the dead category. I can't remember exactly what this card does, but I know I think if you destroy it, it goes back into your hand and then you can play it for 0 cost. It's terrible. It's really, really bad. It needs more stats for it to be good. It's not as bad as Rhino, though, which deserves its own category. We have Scorpion next. I think Scorpion is in half decent. I think I'm going to bump Warpath up to the Leech category, I think. Scorpion is lowering all the power of cards in your opponent's hand by 1. I mean, it could be half decent, but it's kind of bad. Up next, we have Storm. One of my favorite cards in the game. I'm very biased. I'm going to put Storm into the popping off category. Like, honestly, Storm is close to this, but it's not quite. Like, with the right synergy, Storm is insanely good. But it's definitely, I think it's a really well-balanced card. I like it a lot. I'm going to put it into the popping off category. We'll put it just behind Agent 13, I think. Obviously, flooding your opponent, flooding the location means only one more turn to play. It's one of my favorite cards, one of my most played cards. Big synergy with cards like Dinosaur, Jubilee, Juggernaut, of course, has huge synergy as a pull 3 card. Vision and Nightcrawler and Captain Marvel and Nova all have synergy with this card. I think it's a fantastic card and it's one of my favorites. Jubilee. I think she's got to go into Broken at the moment, right? Because of the interaction she has with American Chavez. American Chavez is very likely to be pulled by Jubilee. Jubilee's playing the top card from your deck, and because you can't draw Chavez, if Chavez is ever the top card of your deck, you basically just ignore her and draw the second card until turn 6. What that means is the odds of Chavez being the top card are very high. So Jubilee is very consistently playing for 11 stats for 4, which is very, 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 very good. And particularly when you throw Okoye into the mix as well, which is already a great card. Okoye then buffing your Chavez by 2, potentially buffing your Jubilee by 2. It's just even more points. It's like basically 2 extra points on your Okoye that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten, most likely. So yeah, I think she's got to go into the broken category, probably in front of Infonaut, because Infonaut is broken with the synergies. Jubilee also, I think Jubilee's going to be fine once Chavez gets nerfed, because I do think Chavez needs to be less points. Yeah. Vulture's definitely a popping off category for me. Again, like, you see cards like Bucky Barnes more often, you see cards like Sunspot more often, but Vulture is a fantastic card. This card is often played for like 20 stats for me for like 3. Like, honestly, it's close to being broken, but like the deck just isn't quite good enough for it to be the case. Fantastic card, really, really good. I am a big fan. We have Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin's a really interesting one, right? Because like, a spy seems really good on paper, but actually at 5 cost, it's kind of difficult to justify playing in deck. I think the Green Goblin is a better version of this. I'm going to put it into the very decent category. Like, let's be honest, the very decent category is very decent. Like, all these cards are very decent. So I think the tier list has gone quite well, like, in terms of, they can sometimes be hard to, like, order in terms of, like, what actually goes in which category. Like, you can order the cards, maybe. But yeah, like, Hobgoblin's a very decent card. I don't think it's popping off quite. I think Green Goblin is better, which is, like, -3 stats for 3 cost. You can completely wreck your opponent with this, but it's also a high risk card, right? There's many times you'll play Hobgoblin and your opponent fills up that row that turn, and then suddenly you've got -8 points on your side. And finally, we've got Morbius. Morbius is getting 2 points for whenever you discard a card. So I think what we need to do here is we need to add a row above, and we need to call it Morbing Time, right? And then we'll add the Morbius. Okay, cool. Tier list completed, mate. Now, but for real, where is the Morbius going to go? I think Morbius can go into the decent or very decent category. Probably very decent. Probably very decent. It's probably playing for like 6 stats for 2, which is very, very decent, to be fair. You can't really go wrong. You're going to be playing this in most of your discard decks. So let's just see if there's anything we want to rejiggle. I think Infonaut, controversial being up here, but I'm going to stick with it. Okoye, Agent 13. I'm happy with all these in the popping off category. Shang-Chi you could put here, but like, honestly, the swing that Shang-Chi gives you is just insane. Can win you a location. Nakia, Sunspot, Hobgoblin, Vision, Bucky, Morbius, Swarm. Controversial one, but I think this card's underrated. I want to play around with this card a lot more. Ebony Maw as well, like, I think underrated card. You could maybe make a case to like bump these down a bit, right? And then bump like Warpath down, I guess. Bump Leech down. Maybe this is better. Maybe this is a bit more fair. Yeah, I think we'll go with this. I think like Ebony Maw could prove to be upper category though, but like this looks a bit better to me. I'm happy with this, I think. All right, there's my tier list, guys. What do you think? Is there anything that you would change? Anything that you don't agree with? Do you think that Rhino is secretly the best card of the game? Because if you do, give your head a wobble. I'm going to do pool 3 as well soon. It's going to be the most difficult. And I do want to revisit pool 1 because my opinions, I think, have changed a little bit on some of those cards since I recorded that video. But obviously, balance patch coming soon. So I'll probably just wait until the balance patch to revisit pool 1 and pool 2. Pool 3 coming in the next couple of days. Look out for that. And thanks so much for watching on the video. Make sure you check me out on Twitch if you watch this far. And let me know in the comments, what card do you disagree with? I'm sure there's at least one card. Like, you're probably thinking, Infonaut's not broken. Guys, trust me. Ghost Rider, hella OP. And you could say that those cards are OP, but then you've got Dracula, Jubilee. There's so many cards this enables. Even Lockjaw Infonaut is ridiculously strong, right? So, yeah. All right, cool. Thanks, bye. Deuces. It does have a big downside, to be fair, but yeah. I think it just needs to relax a bit. All right, cool. See ya. Bye.